Yes, finally the long and divisive election season is over, the votes have all been counted, and while it looks like the incumbent might have lost a lot of the revolutionary charm he had when he was first elected, the president has been granted another term of office by the voters. Now, I'm not talking about Washington, D.C., but of Caracas, Venezuela, where Hugo Chavez has been granted another 6-year term by the voters in the election this previous Sunday, October the 7th. Chavez, known to most Americans as the fiery opponent of the devil, George W. Bush, has been leading his country towards a Bolivarian socialist style of governance since 1998. And to his socialist credit, he has made some serious gains in improving the status of women, of improving the status of the indigenous people in the country, of reducing poverty and illiteracy and public health crises. However, worryingly, in his post-election acceptance speech, he spoke about continuing on with his revolutionary plan instead of working to mollify some of the social crises and tensions that have built up in Venezuela over his past few years in power. Despite the almost tenfold rise in the price of oil, the mainstay of the Venezuelan economy over the tenure of Mr. Chavez's administration, public infrastructure remains weak, with shoddy roads and rolling electrical blackouts common across the country. Furthermore, organized crime, fueled in part by the shortages of food across the country, has blossomed, and Caracas is now famous for having the world's highest murder rate. And even more so, the Bolivar, the Venezuelan national currency, is facing serious inflation, and the economy remains stuck in its fossil fuel dependency. With such national problems, the electoral turnout of over 80% of the country was one of the highest results ever, and the opposition candidate actually did very well. Facing state-dominated media rules, as well as organized plots to disrupt and disorient the opposition political rallies, the opponent candidate, Enrique Capriles Radonsky, still managed to receive over 45% of the vote. That'd be like if Mitt Romney pulled a really close electoral loss, but the FCC had banned all Republican-leaning media, and Democratic thugs had started throwing rocks at Romney rallies or something like that. Such an unusually close election should serve to temper some of the radical aspirations of President Chavez, or at least warn him about growing unified opposition to his dominant style of power. Under Chavez's restructuring of the state constitution in the early 2000s, a huge network of political patronage has formed, and his executive branch has largely gobbled up huge amounts of power, basically stating if you want any sort of political or government job in the country, you have to be a fan of Chavez. They removed all constitutional term limits, meaning that when he is done serving out his term in 2019, he'll have been serving in power as the president for almost 2 decades, and could in fact very easily run up until the 2030s, as he has sometimes said he would want to. The national legislature, dominated by Chavistas, as they're called, has become sort of a rubber stamp parliament for his policies, and any sort of judges or journalists who have opposed Chavez's style of rule have simply been pushed out of the way. Worse, mirroring some of the nastier aspects of our own national dysfunctional politics, the Chavez election campaign has seriously expanded a lot of the social and political gaps in the country. He referred to his opponents as good-for-nothings and fascists, trying to sound like he's from the 1940s or something, and opposition has actually broken out at a lot of political rallies. Just for a little bit of comparison about how close this election is, the last time he ran for president, Hugo Chavez won by almost 2/3 of the vote. Hopefully this election shows him that he no longer has the political mandate to try and remake Venezuela in his image, and must instead work to benefit every member of the Venezuelan civil society.